Hello, this is Christine, and I am from Thrive CRNA, and I wanted to do a live today, just to do a live on frequently asked questions of how to become a CRNA. And if this is your first time here, welcome. And if you have subscribed to the channel, thank you so much. Your subscription truly helps me, allow me to do these lives and share as much information about becoming a CRNA. Now, I just wanted to say thank you again for all of the subscribers. Thank you for allowing me to be anywhere in the world and share as much about my profession selflessly. I love sharing. That's one of the biggest things with me. I love giving, sharing, and I might not have all the answers, but I'm here to just give as much as I can, especially since I am currently an experienced CRNA. I've been working for over a decade, and I still remember the journey of how to become a CRNA. And there wasn't much stuff on the internet. There wasn't a lot of YouTube channels at that time that really explained about how to become a CRNA. It was pretty much like who you knew would help you get into the career. And I still remember being nervous, not knowing for sure if this would be the right route for me, because initially I went into nurse practitioner school. That was pretty much the route that was, blessed upon me. And then I got to go ahead and decide to change my mind and go into CRNA school. So right now I'm nice and comfortable. And I just want to be real with you. So I'm just giving a couple more minutes just to make sure everyone gets on. And if you weren't able to drive the live, it's okay. Thank you so much for watching this video. So let's get started. So let's talk about how to become a CRNA first. Just start off with the beginning steps, okay? So the fastest route to become a CRNA is you will have to become a registered nurse, have a bachelor's degree. That's the first step. Then you need at least a minimum of 1 to 2 years of ICU experience. But to have a highly competitive application, I would say about 2 to 5 years. Now that doesn't really need to be for every person, because if you are in a high acuity hospital, you have really great experience, and you're very active on your unit, it can be less than a year. Okay, sorry, not less than a year, minimum of a year. Then after that, you need to think about like what are the steps. You need to have your ICU experience, but within that ICU experience, what does that vary? That definitely varies, because saying, for example, in a rural hospital, for example, it's very difficult to have the experience that you might need. But you can make that rural hospital or that smaller hospital give you the experience you need by being active on your unit, being charge nurse, being a part of resuscitation code team, for example, being a preceptor, educating others, because teaching really allows you to know and be an expert within the field, right? So to really be an expert, you should be able to teach. And then, maybe some research on your unit, leadership opportunities. Those are some things to just think about when you're thinking about becoming a CRNA. Okay. So I had a couple of questions that I wrote out just to get started before, if anyone has any questions, just to share as much as possible. So the first question, I remember doing a video on this, is the ICU experience, for example. Like what type of ICU experience you might need, for example. So I would say the best units is, trauma ICU, medical ICU, neuro ICU, surgical ICU, medical. I mean, it's a variety of ICU you can go into. So you basically have to be in an ICU setting. Now, if you, for example, was a medical surgical nurse on the floor, or maybe you worked in pediatrics, or you worked in oncology, maybe you did um, IT, for example. Yes, you have nursing experience, but you need intensive care unit experience. That's just a requirement for the class, for the program. Sometimes some students say to me, "Oh, what about ER experience?" ER experience is awesome. It's really great. It can add to your application, but some schools might accept it, but it's highly unlikely nowadays when you're looking at the application. Now, the next question I had all these questions written out for you just to make it so I'm on point for you. All right. So I think we spoke about this before. How many years of ICU experience would be competitive, for example? So yes, a lot of schools will say to you, "Oh, you just need 1 year minimum experience," but that doesn't indicate that you'll get accepted. How to be highly competitive as a student? I would say more than 1 year. So if, for example, you work in a high acuity hospital, for example, very busy intensive care unit, you're getting a variety of patients, you're getting the sickest patients on that unit, for example, and you have been involved in leadership and doing all the things because you are just so focused on this is my journey. Yes, I would say 1 year, right? But the average person, depending on where they're working, their ICU may not be as busy. So it may take you a little bit more. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, the great thing about becoming a nurse in general is a very stable career. There's so many jobs, especially because there are shortages, like literally shortages. So I remember when I graduated, this is probably 20 years, I don't know, like nursing school, maybe more than I've been around for a while. But just being real with you, right? Having a conversation, being authentic, being myself. Um, I remember the average nurse, like in the field of nursing, was about 47, right? And educators were a lot older. Not to say that there's a young educator out there, a professor, for example, but the average nurse and even educator to teach these nurses are a lot older, and there's a huge shortage. What does that mean? There's like not as many nurses, so there's a high demand. That's great. This is a field that's always going to be needed. Nowadays, people are getting sicker and sicker, right? Not saying I'm not trying to be negative, but you hear about a lot more conditions and disorders and comorbidities, and people on all these different medications. People are requiring hospitalizations. And so more and more hospitals are have to basically open up their hospital and build it and make it more bigger because of the demand. So that is a great thing about nursing. You're going to be needed. Okay. So working in the ICU, for example, again, back on topic, even if it's more than a year, for example, hey, I would say have a competitive application, I would say 2 to 5 years, plus or minus. But of course, there are rare occasions where I've actually met students because I precept, I love educating, I love being with people who are brand new to into the field of nursing, medical field, want to become a CRNA. I just love being a part of that energy. And so that's why I'm here as well, to be virtual, to basically allow myself to reach more people than just my local hospital. And so I would say that's amount of years. So you may say to yourself, to kind of get into more detail, Christine, so Thrive CRNA, like, so how long have you been a CRNA, for example, right? Not sorry, not how long did you need to be in the ICU, sorry, to go ahead and apply to a CRNA program? Great question, right? You must want to know that, right? Because I'm talking about that. And so for me, it was approximately, let's see, between 3 to 5 years. Why? Because when I became an ICU nurse, I went right into nursing. I did a residency program where I was trained as a graduate nurse to go into the ICU. And nowadays, a lot of hospitals are doing that now. And any questions? Yeah, just checking for any questions. So um, I did the graduate program, and as I was doing the graduate, program, residency program to become an ICU nurse, I wanted to become a nurse practitioner. And so the hospital I worked at was able to fund me to go to school for free. Just had to pay taxes or plus or minus things, that normally goes along with going to school. And so I was going to go to nurse practitioner. And initially, when I was in the ICU, I didn't know for sure if I wanted to become, a CRNA, for example. I didn't really know much about it. It was like the when you go into the ICU, you find out that everyone wants to become a CRNA. It's like this whole nother world. Hi. Hey, nice to see you, Mitchell. And so, yeah, Mitchell, just explaining like my path. So I was in the ICU, and I was going to nurse practitioner school. And I was a nurse practitioner. I was doing full-time ICU, part-time nurse practitioner school. I think that's what it was. And it's been so long. And I was in school for maybe 3 years or so before I decided to switch to become a CRNA. And I took and then that's when the application process and my whole journey to deciding to become a CRNA. So maybe 5 years, maybe 4 years plus or minus, I would say. And so, just to be truly honest, that was pretty much my path. And so, I'm just going through some questions. As you can see, the lights on me. Just need to go through questions so I stay on track for you. Um, so, okay, next question. So, a lot of people say to me, like, Christine, what's the GPA? Like, I heard it's like so competitive. And I will say, yes, that's something to think about. You may say to yourself, oh, I have a really low GPA. Forget about it. I'm not even going to apply to nursing, or I'm not even going to become a CRNA. That should not deter you. You know, I did not have a high GPA initially when I was in college, to be honest. And I had to retake classes. I actually didn't really retake classes. When I was in nurse practitioner school, for example, that's how I kind of retake classes. I took a lot of advanced practice, master's courses, which is a higher degree, and I did very well. And so, yes, my undergrad overall wasn't the highest GPA, right? But my graduate courses, since I was more mature, I was more mature, to be honest. I was more focused. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew my time management. I pretty much knew, like, when you figure out what you want to do, you pretty much put a lot more focus and attention. And so when I was in graduate school, for example, that's when I decided to myself, like, all right, I want to take this seriously. I want to really get great grades, not for someone else to look at. No, it was for me. It was my journey. I wanted to do well. And at that time, I didn't know I wanted to be a CRNA. I was literally focused on my career, my degree. And then when I did apply for CRNA school, for example, that's when my grades came into effect. And of course, they see your courses, and some of my grades were not high. Okay, I had a lower GPA than the average acceptance person, but my graduate courses were very high. And they look at your GPA. Yes, they see the number, but that's not the main focus. They look at, as a committee, they look at all your courses. They sit there, they look at all your courses, and they kind of pull out the courses that's very important for their school. They look at that, and they kind of look at those science courses, and they make a GPA for that. And so if you did, for example, like, say, art, for example, and maybe you got a D, for example, like, is that really going to make a difference in your acceptance rate if overall all your other courses are, B plus or an A's, for example? That's the kind of thing they look at, for example. And so think about that. Now, for example, if you took courses that are science related, like chemistry, biology, a great question. I'm going to answer that question for you. I just got a question. So, whatever, you need to retake those courses to get a higher GPA. So yes, so I have a question. Can you give a range of how low your GPA was? So when I can't even remember GPA, to be honest, but my range was probably overall. So when I initially went to college, I went to Ithaca College, okay, and I wanted to do biology, right? So my first year or two, my GPA was, to be honest, it was not high GPA. And then when I transferred over to University at Buffalo, then I wanted to get into nursing school. I really wanted to get into nursing school. And when I initially went to University of Buffalo, that's when I knew like I need to get into this program. But I got accepted into the school, but I didn't get into the program. So I did everything. I was studied like crazy. I even worked and volunteered, like not work, like it's like there's a thing when you're in school, you can work in the department. And I worked in the department, for example. Hey, sugarcane. I love these names. Um, hey, I worked in the department and I literally studied my butt off and I got a higher GPA. So by the time I graduated, it was probably a 3.5, maybe 3.7. But that didn't, so now you got to remember, I transferred from another school. So when I graduated my University of Buffalo, that GPA for that school was very high, right? Because I was focused, I was mature, I was ready. But maybe Ithaca College, I don't remember if it was like, it was definitely on a lower end. So if you take those two GPAs together, then, right, if they look at admissions to a university, is for example CRNA school, they put that together, it's definitely lower, right? You got to take the average, but they don't look at it like that. They look at your science core courses, the courses that are in that school. And then when I went to my nurse practitioner program, I was so focused. I had a 4.0 GPA. I was so focused. I was ready. I was like, this is I literally, I think it was like a 3 point something, 9 or 8 or to 4.0. I was so serious, right? So but I had to work extra hard. I wasn't the student who was gifted with knowledge that I knew, like I mean, all the answers. I had to study for hours upon hours. I was like the person that had to work 10 times harder than the average person. That was just me. And I accepted myself and I just studied my butt off. And I got a really high GPA because of the hard work, right? You work hard. So let me go through some questions. Okay, can you range? But the range for CRNA school to give you the answer that you need to know, because it's not about me, it's about you. You need a 3.3 to 3.5 GPA. That's plus or minus. Now, usually there's a minimum cutoff of 3.3. Now, it could be 3.0 depending on the school, right? Every school is different. And that's something to think about. So retake the science courses, chemistry, biology, maybe pathophysiology, pharmacology. Those are some examples. So let me go through the next question. I love your content. Oh, yay! Can you include content for people who do not go through education system in the United States but wanting to do nursing? So that's a very interesting question because there are actually nurses in other parts of the world. Just to get into this question, it's actually really interesting because for example, I met this one girl, she's from the Philippines, and I think she was a nurse in the Philippines. And so go through your schooling for example, whatever country you're in, right? What country? I would love to know what country you're from. Um, Michelle. Okay, so let me know what country you're from. But for example, she was Philippines, did nursing in her country. She made sure it was an accredited program. So every country is an accreditation. Make sure you're in a school that's accredited. Then when you are a nurse, you get your registered nurse. It's all around the world, right? If you decide to come to America, for example, you have to take an NCLEX exam, and that's the exam in America to be able to be registered to become a nurse and work. So that's something to think about when you are considering becoming a CRNA. Because now CRNA is not in every country. There's different labels. Like for example, in Canada, more of an anesthesiologist assistant. Other parts of the world, it's not recognized, but there are some CRNAs who traveled, for example, to Saudi Arabia or other parts of the world, and they can practice. And also doing, okay, let me see, next question. Okay. Okay, so next question is, given the current competitiveness of school, how many schools do you recommend people to apply for? Perfect question. So I'll give you a perfect example. I actually had a question, had a conversation with a current CRNA student, and we were talking. I was like, hey, what's going on with when you apply to CRNA school, for example? This was within probably a couple months ago. This is like fairly recent. I said, so can you tell me a little bit about your process and how many schools you applied to and what you've noticed with all of your classmates? And a lot of people apply to like 6 schools. It's not just one school. It's like 6 schools. Now, maybe not 6 schools, but I remember when I applied to 3 schools. No, more than that, actually. I even applied to like Texas, one of the schools in Texas. I don't remember the name. I applied to a school in Virginia, which is Virginia Common Health. I think that was one of them. Think. I remember I applied to 2 different, I was willing to travel across the country to become CRNA. I tried to 3 schools in New York. So maybe that's, oh my God, that's like 5 schools. So I would say you have to apply to at least a minimum of 5 schools, honestly. Because you know what? It's like you have your school that's like the top school you really want to go, that's close to home. But sometimes things don't happen the way you expect it. And you want to have a backup plan, right? Always want to have a backup plan. And this is a conversation you have to have with your family. Like, are you willing to travel? When I was in CRN school, one more quick example before I move on to the next question someone sent out is I had a classmate. Okay, we're in New York. I went to school in New York, SUNY Downstate. There's no more anesthesia school at this time. I don't think there is currently, but when there was, um, my classmate was from California. Like, what? California. So he was in his 40s. He had a family, he had children. They lived in California. He traveled all the way, devoted. He wanted to be a CRNA. Traveled all the way from California and came to school. And he had a long distance relationship with his family. He was always on his phone, keeping updated. He missed a lot for that 2.5 years, because when I went to school, it was about a 2.5 year program because it was a master's program. Now the schools are doctoral degrees, 3 to 3.5 years. Things change. And so he traveled, he was devoted, graduated, went back home, an amazing CRNA. So that's something to think about, at least 5 schools. Let's see, next question. Okay, CT12. Hey, thank you so much for encouraging those who aspire to become in your shoes. Of course. Honestly, I'm here to help as much as possible. Like, I remember struggling when I was even in my undergraduate school. Like, I remember the reason why I did really poorly. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I was in rowing. I was a crew. So I did rowing team. And I was so dedicated to that. And so going to, so doing that type of like sport, to be able to go to university, to be able to be, to go through, to try to get a better career and do good for myself. This is not what my parents or my family would want for me. And so I remember that stuck with me. And that's kind of a turning point for me, that I realized like this is not okay. I literally stopped going to crew. Like, I had to give up my beautiful, amazing sport that I wanted to do in college because it really affected my schoolwork, and that wasn't something that I was okay with. So yeah, wanted to be honest with you. And a lot of family, being far away from my family. I went to school, like, I'm from New York City. I went to school at university. Well, first it was Ithaca College, and that's where rowing. And then I went to University of Buffalo, and I was considering to do rowing then. I think I did a couple of, you know, like maybe a couple of months or so, and I knew that it just still wasn't working, and I just decided to not do it anymore. Lessons to learn, and I'm human, right? You're human, and your journey might be different. And yeah, all right. So, does experience leverage GPA? Yes, that's a question. That's yes, it does. As a nurse who's been active for 15 years, amazing. Would it be worth going back to school to boost a GPA, a 3 to a 3? Yes. And would experience help? Yes. So now, RT12, the question is for you, 15 years of what nursing experience? Are you 15 years of ICU experience? That's a question. Because if it's regular nursing, that's very generalized. So if it's regular nurse, like nothing regular, that's not saying regular nursing. Nursing is an amazing career, but saying it's not ICU experience, you still need a minimum of 1 year of ICU experience. Now, if it's 15 years of ICU experience, that's amazing. And yes, I would say go back to school, retake classes to bring up that GPA. But I think I have an answer for you too. On my phone, just my okay. So, wait 1 second. Try to be all organized with this computer to have everything, all the questions organized. So this is a thing I was going to talk about. So for to answer ICU, wow, 15 years of ICU experience, that's amazing. Honestly, if this is what you want to do, you do it. You can go to a community college, for example, that's close to home and retake some of the courses. Like maybe you retake your chemistry, maybe take care of your biology, maybe your anatomy, physiology, maybe your microbiology, your pharma. I know it's a lot of courses. I'm talking about this is a general answer. I would retake my courses. If this is what you want to do, because if you say to yourself, oh, I really want to be a CRNA, you're always wondering, like, oh, I want to be a CRNA. And you just need a little bit of fire, especially for me. I'm giving you some fire. You don't want to regret. Like when I was in school and I wasn't doing well, I was like, oh, like this is not okay. I need to work on myself. How can I make myself better? I retook. I mean, when I went into nursing, I wanted to get into nursing school, and it was very competitive for some reason when I wanted to go to school. And so I did everything I can to get into school. My grades was, I literally, by the time I graduated, the last 2 years of I was so determined. I literally had 3.8, 4.0 GPA. I was that focused in all my nursing courses, right? But before that, it wasn't as high. Yeah, life happens, right? Whatever. The past is the past. You can't change the past. We can't talk about the past like, oh, I wish, I wish. No, 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 no. Let's focus on the now, this moment. Retake your courses. Now, also, RT12. Do you have your BLS? You definitely do. You're in ICU. ACLS, you need that. You definitely have that. Pediatric life support as well. PALS. If you don't have that, you should get that. I just want to go through a couple of things. These are a lot of updates too. Your CCRN, you must have it. Okay. Even if schools don't ask you or require it, you need it. And there was a couple other things I was gonna say about. No, yeah. So you need to get those things. You need to start precepting. You probably have precepted before. Precepting is huge. Have you shadowed a CRNA? Have you seen, even though you know this job and you may have seen it on a unit, have you gone and sit with a CRNA and see the day in the life? Important. That's important for your personal essay and for your application. Have you been a charge nurse? You probably have because you've been 15 years. What's your acuity at your ICU? Are you getting yourself into like the most difficult patients? Sometimes with experience, like you don't want to have the most sickest patient. It's a lot. But if you're thinking about the CRNA journey, got to get those sick patients, okay? To really build your skill set. And are you doing leadership opportunities on your floor, for example, or in the hospital? Research. Start thinking about those things because You're close. You're there. I mean, so many people would love to have 15 years of ICU experience and want to go into CRNA. Do it. Do it if that's what you really want to do. All right, next question. How would you describe the difficulties? Great questions. These are some things I actually wrote down. I had it all organized, but I'm happy actually asking the questions that I was going to talk about. Do you have free time? Okay. So, to be brutally honest, CRNA school is no joke. Like, you have to be the level of an anesthesiologist. When you're working as a CRNA, it's not like you're under supervision. Yes, you are under supervision with the anesthesiologist, but you are in the OR by yourself, heart back. You in the OR by yourself, managing this patient. You're working closely with the surgeons and all the other nurses or techs in the room. You are titrating their anesthetic. You are giving them vasoactive medications. It's literally kind of like the ICU that you're titrating, your beat to beat monitoring of these patients. I mean, I love being a CRNA. It's just you have to make the decisions. At some hospitals, they are more closer, like kind of like more directed. But where I work is pretty independent. But I have a very trusting relationship with the doctors I work with. And if I was in a situation that was very uncomfortable, I am not a cowboy. I'm going to call for help because it's not about me and my ego. It's about the patient. What do they need? So it's very independent. So when you think about that mindset, just to give you a little mindset before I go into CRNA school, and CRNAs can work independently. A lot of places they work independently. I've worked independently in OB, for example. I worked 24-hour shifts in the past, and I did epidurals, spinals, C-sections, managed patients in OB, and the surgeons would sign off on my charts. It was just me. And if it was an emergency, for example, I had to go for a stat C-section, I need a second hand. Yes, I would contact the anesthesiologist to come in because at the end of the day, it's about the patient. It's not about me, right? So just for a second, just think about that. You're like, that's the mindset. So now let's talk about the answer now. Difficulties of CRNA school, very difficult. Honestly, very difficult. But not difficult enough that you can't do it. There's nothing to say that you're not smart enough. Me, for example, it takes me, if you have a person that's like the average person, I have to study 10 times harder to understand the material. Um, but with dedication and hard work, you can do it. Let me give you an example because you need examples, like real life examples. So I was pregnant. You may have heard this story. I'm probably repeating it, but I want to let everyone know how real it is who have never met me before. Because who's Christine, right? Who's Thrive CRNA? And so I want to share it because I'm so passionate about it to give you the motivation to say, if she can do it in this situation, I sure can do it. I was 9 months pregnant, went to my orientation for CRNA school. I got accepted, pregnant. And I went to my orientation. I thought my husband was the student, and it was me, 9 months pregnant. My professor looked at me, my first time having a child. I had no clue. She's like, your belly didn't drop. He's like, you're not going to have your baby before you start school. He's like, you need to start walking. That's the type of positive energy that support I have even from my professor. It wasn't like, oh, you're pregnant, you can't go to school. No, 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 no. I was supported along the journey. So yeah, and I had my child. I walked every day since orientation, hours with my husband, because I wanted to have my daughter before I went to school, because I thought that I was going to have my daughter when I'm in class in CRNA school. I thought I was going to have my daughter in class. So I walked every single day. And yes, I had her 6 days before I started school. A newborn baby. And my husband and I, we were very more natural. I mean, what do they call them? Crunchy, whatever. all these labels, right? I'm just human, but I really wanted to like breastfeed and do things naturally. And I wanted to be with my husband, be with my beautiful daughter. And we didn't know anything. I thought, oh, having a baby, going to school, no big deal. But I definitely was surprised. So went to school. And for me, since I did my nurse practitioner, I had a couple of courses that I didn't have to retake. I didn't have to retake, I think it was patho, because I did that already. And there was another course, I don't remember. But I did have to retake some of the courses that, even though I did it in a nurse practitioner school, but it was easy for me because I already did it. So it was kind of like a repeat. So that helped me along my journey. Um, but in general, the actual class, like we had to take research, pathophysiology. Most students had to do it. I didn't have to do that one. Pharmacology, I did that already, but I had to retake it because the school required. And then the anesthesia courses. And even having a newborn baby, and my husband could not work because we had to give up, he couldn't work, because I had a baby and I needed support. And I took out a bunch of loans, a ton of loans, whatever. I had to. And the schooling was so rigorous. Like the information, like you think you're an ICU nurse and like, I know I'm an ICU nurse. Like usually when you have like for example, RT12 has about 15 years of ICU experience, just to let everyone know. So you think like, oh, I have 15 years of ICU experience. I know my stuff. Is it easy flow? I'm precepting and all these things, right? Then you go to CRNA school, anesthesia school. I like things went in my ear, went out my ear. I had no clue. It was like I started from like I'm learning how to do my ABCs and my numbers. Like I literally didn't even know how to do that. That's the kind of difficulty the school was. But you have the support. I remember my classmates, we were in like we lived in the library and we helped each other out, right? Because my professor said to me, it's like, look to the left, look to the right. In most med schools, like you have 500 students, maybe 100 graduates. I don't know what the numbers are today, but in my program, he was like, you're all graduating. Everyone's passing their boards, everyone's graduating. No matter if you have a newborn baby, no matter if you're going through a life crisis, you come to me and we're going to work it out. That's the thing you got to think about when you go into school. Are they going to support you? And so I remember the first semester was difficult. I remember crying because it was like I had a newborn baby I wanted to love so much, but I had to have her on my chest and I was literally studying. Like any activity, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't go to any, like I did go to family events, but when I did go, I was like stressing. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta leave. I gotta go home and study. I studied morning, I studied evening, I studied night, I studied on the weekends. Studied a lot because for me it was harder for me. Then the next semester, so my school before was more of you is integrative, so you're learning and you're doing clinical. So my second semester, for example, um, I was taking courses. Now, the second semester was strictly anesthesia related courses. So I did chemistry, physics. I mean, it was chemistry within physics. I mean, I mean, there's so many advanced courses that we took within the second semester. And then to sweeten it with a nice cherry on top, I had to go to clinical I think 3 or 4 days a week. And so you're there from like the operating room and for surgery. You got to be there by 5:36 in the morning, right? And then you're in surgery, right? As a CRNA, with a CRNA, of course, you're, being precept. And you're there till 3, could be 4, could be 5. And if it's a sick patient, I wanted to stay because I wanted to learn as much as I can. So when I graduate, I'm prepared. But sometimes I stayed late. And then I had to, for example, for me, I had to travel maybe on the trains because I was in New York City. I had to travel I went to school, I went to clinicals in the Bronx, and then I lived in Long Island. And so when I took the train, it's like 2 or 3 hours. Or if my husband would drive, there's traffic. And so I had a system organized where I recorded I would like literally read my my textbook out loud and then record myself. And when I'm driving or I'm in the train or my husband was driving, I would listen to myself while I was while we were going. I think that's the type of studying you have to do. And I remember my second semester saying to myself, I can't do this anymore. I have a daughter. It was a lot. And going to clinicals in school, like I cried. And I told my husband, I'm like, hey, I don't think I can do this anymore. And my husband turns to me and he says, you have no other option. You have to go to school. We have loans. I'm not working. This is what you wanted. Yes, we have a child, but this is what you wanted. And so suck it up pretty much. And so of course I finished and so happy. Okay. I'm sorry, go on a tangent. I get a little emotional. I just love sharing my experience because I feel like it makes it real. Okay, so next question. Um, okay, so next question is there usually a good working relationship among the anesthesia team, MDAA, during procedures? Any difficulty or challenge? So yes, well, it depends on where you work, right? So culture wise, it all depends on where you work, but in general, I've always had really good experience. I've had some couple of like, different personalities, just like at any job, being a nurse in the ICU and working with physicians, working with fellows. It's the same type of dynamic. Um, but overall, there's a pretty great working relationships. I mean, you have moments where you have surgeons who are, just more unique, for example, but overall, I've had really good experiences. It's all about your attitude, right? And so, even as a nurse, quick example, if you are a nurse and you've dealt with different personalities, even different nurses that you're working with, it's the same dynamic. So, that's one of the questions that they'll ask you when you do your interview. I was going to talk about that too. Is that they're going to ask you about how do you emotional intelligence is very important. What does that mean? And how you deal with stressful situations, because you're going to be in those situations with any dealing with other personalities, because everyone's different, but you are well respected, as a CRNA. And even as a nurse, you are well respected. Um, so yeah, you're going to have your challenges at personalities. That's normal. And any difficulties. And of course, if a patient's getting sick or something's changing and that you can't answer it, you ask for help. And they always come in and come for you and help you. Um, I mean, they're under the chart, right? So it's technically under their name too. So they have to come and help you. So I don't really have any issues like that. But you do have personalities, just like nursing, that you have to work through. And that's one of the things, like I said, the interview, they're going to ask you about that. Yay! I'm so happy. I'm so happy. Even if it was one person on this live, even if there was no one on this live, I was gonna just post it anyways. And for me, it'll reach someone, and that's all that matters, right? And even if no one watched this video, I'm just thankful to just be here and share. So now, if anyone has any other questions, I was gonna go through some more stuff, just in case someone watches the replay. Okay. I think I kind of spoke about it. How do you stand out as an applicant for a CRNA school? Like I said before, your GPA is very important, but mainly the sciences is huge, right? Art, or, if you get a D in arts, I mean, you want to get good grades, but it's mainly the science courses that really matter the most. Chemistry, biology, physiology, anatomy, physiology, those type of courses, right? Those are the big key courses. Let's see, what other questions? Also leadership opportunities. Getting all of your certifications, CCRN. shadowing, those things really help your application. And if anyone thinks of a question, I'm here. I'll just keep going through my list of questions that I kind of wrote up. Let's see, another question here. Hey again, love the questions. All right. In terms of finances, how do one navigate? Ah, I love this. Now that the Ministry of Education has indicated that nurses are not classified as professional career anymore. I've heard about that. Um, that is tough, that's happening. And hopefully that will change in the future, but in general, so finances wise, so this I had actually had an so when you're thinking about CRNA school, there's private and public schools, right? Just to go through a basic understanding of schooling with the numbers, so you can kind of understand a little bit more. So there's a private school and there's public school. So public schools, like say for example, you're in New York, and I'll give you an example. You go to SUNY Downstate, which is upstate New York, right? It's a state school. It is a public school, and so your tuition is a lot less. Okay, that's an example of actually a CRT school um, in New York. I'll give you an example. State school in New York, right? And so, you're looking at these numbers are changing compared to like Columbia University, right? An Ivy League school like that, you're looking at a lot higher um, tuition as well as finances. So average 88,000, I looked it up, 88,000 to about 200,000. So for me, since it wasn't just a tuition alone, I went to a state school, it was SUNY Downstate. And so it was a lot cheaper than the average school, for example, is great, but I had to also get loans to live. I had loans to pay for my rent, pay for my food, pay for my insurance, pay for my car, all those different things, right? So I had to take out loans for that, not just for the tuition. So it would have been a lot less. So when I graduated, it's definitely six figures, like 100,000, 130,000. But that was 10 years. That was like more than 10 years ago, right? And so schools are a lot higher, and maybe you have saved and you are financially set and you're just paying for the tuition, for example, be a lot less. Now, when you think about navigating through finances, there's financial aid. I mean, I would still, those things, I haven't really researched it. I haven't, gone to school again recently, but I would do a little bit of research on financial aid, the FAFSA, fill out the FAFSA form. And that can be an avenue, scholarships, and beat on the bush, honestly, just take out loans. I know it's, or you can also do military gap program where they'll pay for you to go to school. Those are opportunities too. But yes, but the nice thing is when I graduated a six-figure loan, within 3 to 4 years, I paid it off. I didn't just take the money and was like, yay, I'm making money. I literally was like rice and beans, beans and rice type of mentality, and paid off my debt. And so I have no loans because I focused. I was like, I wanted to get rid of this debt because you get paid well. So if you budget and really organize your finances, within 3 years, you can pay it off. I even paid off my nursing because I didn't pay it off. I was young and naive and just wanted to not pay it off. And so I paid off my nursing and my CRNA. So think about that within 3 to 4 years of working as a CRNA. Next question. Hopefully that answered your question. And if that didn't, definitely answer again. As a new ICU RN without contacts, any tips for how go about approaching a CRNA about shadowing? So yeah, if you are a new CRNA, a new ICU nurse, that must be difficult for you to think about, who do I contact? I'll give you an example of what I did. So I went down, I literally worked in the ICU and I went over to the OR and I asked to speak to the chief CRNA that works there. Or you can also talk to the director that's of nursing that works. And you can reach out to them, send them an email, maybe call, but I would say walk down and say, and ask if you can shadow a CRNA. That's what I did. So I asked the chief CRNA at my institution. I said, "Hey, is it possible I can just shadow a CRNA at any point?" And really, they love people coming to shadow. It's pretty common that if you're interested in becoming a CRNA, that you'd come to shadow, and they like that. And so they'll make it happen depending on your institution, how to go about shadowing. So I would say go to your chief CRNA at your go to the OR. I know it's hard to go there. You're nervous, you're anxious, but honestly, if this is what you want to do, you just do it. So yeah, I'll just go to chief CRNA at your hospital. Hopefully that answered your question. Yes, and that's how you shadow. And I say shadow once, maybe shadow twice. That really helps. Have you ever done locums? Yeah, travel. Okay, so that's a great question. Locums and travel CRNA assignments, it is like amazing. Okay, so when I was working as a CRNA for about 3 to 4 years, I decided that maybe I want to do locums. I wanted to travel a bit. I love traveling the world. If you don't know about me, I love traveling. And so I was like, oh, I want to travel the country, right? And maybe the world. Maybe I'll go somewhere else just for a contract. And so I did a lot of research. And I even spoke to companies that would help me with the process. With traveling CRNA, you get paid very well, like very well. Like you get like maybe double of what a standard CRNA makes. They will pay for your licensings. They'll pay for your travel expenses. They'll pay for your car. They'll pay for your flights. Give you a stipend for food, and they'll give you a nice salary as well. Not really salary. You get paid per hour. And you could do a contract. You could do a 12-week contract, a 3 month, 6 month, a year, depending on where you want to go. And you could travel anywhere around the country. And usually, yeah, it's really nice. Get paid really well. And I've actually met a lot of locums because, for example, there's such a huge shortage in nursing and also in CRN as a CRNA and in anesthesia in general. And so there's constantly job opportunities for you to travel or do locum jobs or even work at an institution full time and then pick up a couple of the shifts at another hospital. It's amazing. A lot of flexibility there with hours. And I would definitely recommend it. I would say my recommendation is be an ICU, be a CRNA for at least a year and then travel. But I have I actually met a CRNA that graduated and started locums. That's how much of a shortage there was, and she was able to do it. But I would say go work somewhere for 1 year at least and then travel. Okay, fail my classes. Okay, so here's another person. I failed most of my classes until I chose nursing. Once I chose nursing, my grades changed complete for the better. 3.2 overall, 3.5 in science. Okay, all A's and B's. Do you think directors would pick up on this? Yes, directors will pick up on this. And so yeah, they will definitely pick up on this. They don't look at just a GPA number. They want to make sure that when you get accepted into their program, that they see that you're going to succeed because it looks bad upon the program, right? They're not going to have someone come into the program. And even if they have a 4.0 GPA, right? But their emotionally intelligence not there. They don't know how to deal with stressful situations. They don't have any leadership opportunities. They don't have this. They don't have that. And yet, it's a GPA alone. That's not how they look at it. They sit and look at all the things, you know, and you have to have an interview also. So they want to sit and meet you. So yeah, you have this great GPA, or you don't have this great GPA, but we're willing to see where your mindset's at and how you handle situations and stuff and what's your experience. And they will go from there and look at everything. They'll look at your sciences, they'll look at all the courses, they'll look at your leadership opportunities, maybe your precepting, all those different, sorry, I'm all handsy right now. They'll look at everything. And so if you feel you've done everything, like we spoke about early in the video about, all the different steps within the ICU, and if you haven't, definitely there'll be a replay of this video. Definitely look through what I spoke about to strengthen your ICU, make you a stronger applicant, right? I would say apply. Even with 3.2, you have nothing to lose. If you have everything, just try. And then a nice thing is if you do apply, you don't get accepted, you can always contact. I did it. And you can contact and say, hey, I'd like to know what's the reason, I wasn't accepted. Maybe not, maybe send an email and they could kind of tell you like, hey, these are some of the things you need to work on. And then you can work on it. So you have like a plan and you can reapply the next year and maybe the next year. And because it's worth it, right? This is what you want to do. So you do it. What happens if I do poorly on my GRE? This is a perfect question. Good job. A great question. This is actually something I was going to talk about. Is worth the stress. I've been studying for months. Honestly, don't stress about it. Honestly. So some schools you apply to, they may not, if you have, well, depends on your GPA, right? So you have 3.2. But some schools, they don't stress, they don't really care about, it's more flexible. They're not looking at the GREs as much anymore. So if you have the numbers have changed with the GPA. If you have a certain GPA, they'll actually waiver you from, they don't even need your GRE score. So look into that too. And also, some schools don't require it anymore. So just look into that as well. I remember when at once one of the schools I applied to, they loved me. They said, hey, we would love to come for an interview, but your GRE score was low. Mine was low, to be honest. It wasn't the highest. And I said, hey, retake it. I didn't retake it. I got accepted into another school that didn't require it. So that was just my choice. But if it's a school you really want to go to, yeah, you got to study for it. But just keep your options open and breathe. You've got this. Okay, you've got this. Don't stress. Stressing, honestly, the stress is not going to make anything better. Just deep breathing and know that everything will happen the way it's going to happen. You're doing the work. You're just like me. I studied 10 times harder. So I didn't do as well at my GRE. And things actually ended up working out for the best. I actually went to a school that was a blessing, right? And great support. So even the other school was probably going to be amazing too, but it aligned. It really aligned. Okay, wow. Do school reputation, brand, its impact employment? Okay, that's a great question. Emory University is my nearest school. It's very expensive. So honestly, no. School reputation and brand, we all think about, oh, that's something that so important. It's not. It really isn't that important. It's about you graduating your CRNA program, making it through the program. As long as it's accredited, you graduate, right? And passing your MBCRNA examination. And that's pretty much it. It's not really about the brand, going to Yale, going to Columbia. I don't think I've never even heard of. It's interesting because when you're in other careers, you need that, right? But there's such a shortage in nursing and CRNA. You graduate, you graduated from university, you pass your certification exam. They want you to work. That like literally, they'll locums travel so popular because it's so short, and yeah, jobs want you. So no, I would say I don't think that's something that's important, in my opinion, from my experience. But you want to go to an accredited school. Yay, I'm so happy I'm helping. Let's see let me go through any other questions if you have any other questions, keep asking. But let me go through any other content to make sure I don't forget to explain it. Okay. Really quick personal essay, since if you're on that route, thinking about going to CRNA school. So when you're doing your personal essay, just to go really quickly, it's very important because they'll help you with your path to become a CRNA. Start thinking about like why you want to go to anesthesia, like what brought you into the career, what brought you into the career. Start thinking about maybe your experience in the ICU and how that path went. Maybe thinking about maybe a little bit of research, maybe some type of project you may think about doing. It's maybe like brand new for you, but you can look at the school you're going to, look under the professors, and they all do research, especially doctoral degrees now is research based. And you can see what kind of things they're doing. You can get an example and do a little research. So that's a perfect opportunity. Um, and just be authentic and be yourself. You know, don't use ChatGPT. Just be yourself. Doesn't matter. Just be authentic to yourself and just be you. And that speaks more than anything because the personal essay is very important. Um, and also it's explaining to like like your path and how like what steps you want to make to be successful in the program. That's important too. Is there a board exam that CRNAs have to do? Yes, there's a board exam. Just like the NCLEX, there is a board exam for CRNA. So when you graduate your university, they'll actually prepare you for your board exam. Even during your program, they have these different exams you take, kind of similar to like med school, but still different. And you'll take these exams and it'll kind of like see how you're doing in the program. And they also have review courses that they require you to take. And then you just do the modules, do the questions. And so they give you everything you need in school. You don't have to worry. And then you could also do extra like review courses if you wanted to on your own. So I did a Valley Review. I don't know if that's still around. I think it is still around. And they also have Apex Anesthesia is another. I've used it as well online. And Prodigy. I don't know if they still have Prodigy. I did that as well because there's a lot of questions, and that's what I needed. And but you get prepared before you graduate, so you don't have to worry about that now. But you do have to pass that exam um, before you can even work as a CRNA. They won't let you work without that board examination passing, just like nursing, similar. Many schools accept a variety of ICU experience, but do you think there is a specific type of ICU experience? Yes. So not specifically what ICU, because I actually met a couple of CRNA students who've done Neuro ICU, and I remember a while back when I was applying, it wasn't really as accepted, but now they are accepting Neuro ICU. Um, CVICU is really good. Medical ICU, surgical ICU. Honestly, it doesn't matter about like the specific name of ICU. It's about your acuity, high acuity patient population. What does that mean? Patients who are sicker and your experience with advanced, oh my gosh, advanced monitoring, for example. Maybe you have experience patients with ECMO, patients on, all these different things. So this is like it's more about your acuity of patients. Maybe you do patients with CRT, for example, that's like helping with the kidneys. Um, yeah, patients on multiple drips, for example, and you have to titrate their drips, titrate their ventilators. Us having a variety of high acuity because a lot of times we actually go in the ICU and sometimes patients who don't need to be there are there. They're sitting there and talking to you and you're like, why are they here? Right? So you want to have sick patients. Yeah. Many schools accept a variety. Okay. Yes. So yeah, you just want to, I don't think that ICU, for example, matters because you want to be able to explain when you have the interview because they're going to still interview you, about vasoactive medications, ABG interpretations. They'll give you scenarios, for example, and a code situation. And actually, I heard from a student recently when she went to one of the interviews, they had a sim lab. I never had that experience. They had a sim lab And then you think you were for interview to talk, and she went into the room and they had a pretend patient, like a dummy laying there, and they literally ran a code. Like this patient, like you literally look at the monitor and like they're dead, and you have to bring them back alive in an interview. So if you have ICU experience, you have really sick patients. I remember having a lot of codes when I was an ICU nurse, and this is normal. It happens. But how do you run a code situation? How do you differential diagnose and decide on the steps to take care of the patient? Those are some things to think about, right? Let me just make sure I have. Oh my God, it's been over an hour. I'm enjoying myself with you all. I love this. I love this. God, I love these questions. Please, yes. Sorry, I'm so excited. I'm a happy person. What are some high yield clinical type questions that interviewers will ask? Are there typical ones? No, it varies. Some of the yield stuff, I actually have a kind of like an idea of some of the stuff. Like I said, explaining vasoactive medications, interpreting ABGs, a walkthrough of the ventilator will actually tell you to like explain the ventilator and different ventilator modes, managing a hypotensive patient or running a code. Uh, yeah, some things like that. There's not specific because nowadays a lot of the interviews have been changing. When I went to school, it was a lot of questions. Like I remember I had been asked question after question after question, and I actually had to write an essay. And they also asked me emotional intelligence questions. It was a big variety. A lot of schools are moving away from that type of questioning because they know you're smart. They know you were in the ICU. They know you know your stuff. So now they're asking emotional intelligence to really weed out the interviewers because they know you're smart. You're all there for the interview, but they want to see if you fit for that cohort, fit for that model school emotionally, because it's a very emotional intensive program. Like studying is very important, yes, but being in that type of environment, it's very, very difficult. I mean, you have to study a lot, you have to be in clinicals for maybe long hours. It can affect your family, it can affect your support system. May not have time for your children and your activities outside of that. That three, and sometimes you have to travel to different parts of, like some students will travel to like Georgia, and then they have to travel to South Carolina, and they got to travel to North Carolina, like even traveling different states to get their clinical experience. So that's a lot um, for the average person. And so they want to see more of your dynamic. Were you asked any difficult medication questions during your interview? Should we read about it? Yes. I mean, not anesthesia drugs, but you should know your pressors, right? Um, So all your for ICU drugs, for example, that you use to titrate, like epi, norepi, phenylephrine. I mean, a lot of these people may not know these words, but I'm going to say this: your ICU. Um, all the drugs, vasopressin, even your propofol infusions, your sedation medication, your fentanyl. They're not going to ask you anesthesia because you haven't learned it yet. You're not in the program. They want to see with the medication that you've used in the ICU, all of the drips. Do you know your drips? Do you know the drip, for example, what it does? And not just what it does, the mechanism of action. They want to know what happens hemodynamically in the body. You know what I mean? And what receptors it works on. It gets detailed. They want to know the receptors. You know what I'm talking about. The receptors. They want to know contraindications, which patients you would or would not use it for, what type of patient population, these type of things. So know your drugs in and out. Yeah, hope that answered your question. And yes, you should read about not anesthesia drugs because they're not going to ask you anesthesia stuff. They're going to ask you more ICU. Um, so, for example, I'll give you a really good key. Your CCRN, the course that you're pretty much required to take before you apply to CRNA school, that book, know it in and out. That's the questions they'll ask you. Literally, I remember going to my interview and it was snowing. And I think it was a storm. And some students, I guess, didn't come for the interview because of the weather. But me, I was like, I'm going regardless. I'm going in the snow. I'm going to this interview no matter what. It wasn't canceled. And I went. And I remember going, and I was a nerd because I need to study 10 times more than the average person. And I'm sitting there with my CCRN notes. That's what I'm saying. That's the stuff. And I was flipping through and studying. And the thing to tell you about your interview, it doesn't start when you get in the room. It starts as soon as you walk into the office, because there'll be CRNA students will be watching and observing you too, because they have input into the students that get accepted. They do. It's not just the professors. They want input from the students who observe the student, because as a student in the CRNA program, you get to see the students beforehand who are coming for the interview, and they get to see who you really are outside of the interview, right? Because before you get when you get into the office with the interviewers, you act different, right? So people don't realize that your interview starts before you walk in that interview door. They look and see what you're doing. I remember I was studying, looking over this stuff, like, oh my God, I was so nervous. And I had other students talking not nice about things. Don't want to say it because I think it's negative. And people hear, people see little things. So as soon as you walk there and you're acting not professional, no matter if you do great on an interview, you're not getting accepted, to be brutally honest. So just think about that. I am getting interview invites for ICU training positions, but it is too competitive and many other nurses are selected. What else can I do well in an interview? Okay, so if you're getting interview invites, that means they are interested in you, right? So I remember when I went for my interview to become an ICU nurse, I actually wanted to become a psych nurse. Totally different, right? And they would not accept to become a psych nurse. And so I was like, I guess I got to go to ICU, because that's what I did as when I was in nursing school. I did a preceptorship program in that, like the year before. And so they're like, oh, you can come and work. So you get pay a little bit of money and do the whole summer. And so I said, oh, I'll just go to the ICU. And I remember when I went to the ICU, they asked you some questions like, why you want to be there. They may ask you how you deal with stress. They want to see, you know, and schooling. Yes, of course, you want to do well. They actually look at your GPA. They'll look at your GPA and look at your resume, how professional it looks. I have some videos on that because I'm telling you, your resume, even how it looks, is so important. Little things. Your cover letter, like how you present yourself. Those are some things they're going to ask you. And kind of, if you are going for an ICU like training, kind of know a little bit about the ICU setting. Shadow a nurse in the ICU. That's really going to help you as well, strengthen your application to get accepted. Hope that answered your question. Okay. If you have any other questions, definitely ask it. I'm here, and I'm going later than over, but I'm fine with this. Yeah, so I've seen overall acceptance rates are very low. Applying to many schools. Yeah. I spoke about this earlier, more detail about that. And so, yeah, I would say apply to multiple schools. And if you want to know more information, since others have been on, I spoke about it in the beginning of the video, so definitely replay the video. But yeah, you definitely should apply to at least 5 to 6 schools. Okay. I have multiple CRNA shadowing shifts in adult cases. You don't need to have, yeah, you don't need pediatric CRNA, like shadowing. You just need this shadowing a CRNA. That's the biggest thing. Yay, and thank you. I helped you. Yeah, you just need to just shadow CRNA. And I would say shadow a couple of times so you really feel it out. And also that will help you with your interview in the sense that you really know the day in the life of being a CRNA. And I have a video on that, not trying to sell on it. I just want to teach you and give you some idea of what it is. So watch that video. Kind of gives you kind of like a shadowing experience, because and it explains a bit about being a CRNA to help you when you do have the interviews. They're going to ask you like, what does a CRNA do? Like, what does a day in life look like? They'll ask you stuff like that. Let me see. And just to let you know, this is another question. Some people have asked me, like, is this profession like worth it? Like, do you think I'm gonna get work and have a profitable like lifestyle? Yes, you're gonna. It's gonna have. There's so many job opportunities out there. You're gonna get paid very well, well respected, and yeah, you're gonna have a really great career. You think nursing is such a big shortage, even a more of a shortage in CRNA, and the profession, like more surgeries, more sicker patients, more hospitals opening surgery centers. It's a big growth. They still don't have the enough CRNAs or anesthesia providers in general, so you're gonna have a great work. You're gonna work as much or as little as you want, um, and finding a job will honestly will never be a problem, in my opinion. Um, you're gonna be fine. All right, I think I did ask all the questions. All right, so any last minute questions? I'm gonna close up. Just to say thank you for being here and thank you for subscribing. I know, being in the internet and being myself here, I really enjoy this. And my videos are more only going to be live because I feel it's real, and I get to answer your questions versus me thinking of what might be the best video. And thank you for being here. I cherish that because you're really interested in this career. Thank you for subscribing because this allows me to be here for you and answer your questions. And I really appreciate that. From my heart to yours. And if there's any other questions, if you haven't been here in the beginning of the video, I went through a lot of information. I went through a whole bunch of questions. I had future CRNAs ask me questions, people who have been in the ICU, people who have also on the journey pretty close to becoming a CRNA asked a bunch of questions. So definitely rewatch the video because I'm here for you to help you. And thank you so much. Let me see. There's actually one more question. Really appreciate your time. It is useful. Oh, yay. I'm so happy. Yeah, I'm happy this live session is useful because you can see a lot of CRNA videos, but it's nice just to have a live. I want to be live all the time now. I don't want to prepare. For me, I mean, I have tons of videos, tons of hours I spent because I felt like I wanted to make it this perfect video. Um, but yeah, I loved it. It was actually fun. And I got to put a lot of knowledge out there and share as much as I can from my heart because I just want everyone to become a CRNA. Like, I love my career. I don't really meet any CRNAs who don't love their job, honestly. I don't think I've ever met a CRNA who doesn't love their job. Maybe they don't love the environment. You can always change that, right? Um, but we're all pretty happy and are well compensated for our job and a lot of autonomy. Um, I love that. And I feel well supported. I mean, hey, every place is different. It's going to vary. If you don't like somewhere, you move somewhere else, just like a nurse, just like if you work in a regular, another job outside of nursing. If you're not happy, you move, right? To be happy. But I really love this career and I feel it is like a secret career. I didn't even know about it initially. It wasn't even on my radar until I was in the ICU. And even when I was in the ICU, I spoke about it earlier that, I was in nurse practitioner school. I still didn't really want to be a CRNA at that point. I still wanted to be a nurse practitioner. But not until I shadowed, or like, for example, I have a video on shadowing and seeing the day in the life, I was like, whoa, this is pretty cool. I was like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. And so it'll actually make you know if this is for you or not. So, yeah, I love sharing. And do you have any more live sessions planned? So, I am very spontaneous. So this is one thing about me. When I go to work, I'm very like rigid. I don't even like switching my days. I like everything a specific rigid. It's hilarious. But when it comes to outside stuff, I'm very spontaneous. So I even have a YouTube channel on yoga. It helps me so much with the stress, and family life. So I actually did my teacher training, and I teach yoga, and it helps because when I was in school, I was so stressed, and when I had something outside of studying to relieve the stress, I actually did a lot better. Even when I did my teacher training and I had my exam, I did really well because I was able to calm my nervous system. And so for me to make myself be myself, it's going to be totally spontaneous. It'll probably be around this time, like 5 to 7 ish, but it's going to be totally random. And so definitely look out for notifications. I will post a community post and let you know maybe 15 minutes before, um, because of my availability of my schedule. Because I want to be here, but for me, it's very hard to plan because I have children, I have activities with my kids, I have my husband, work, and so I just want to be here for you, but be here full with everything I have versus me being empty and not being able to provide you the knowledge you deserve as a future CRNA. What do you what okay what you're doing your for your strangers is golden. Aw, of course. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time. Of course. Honestly, even I'm just here for you because I remember being in your shoes and not having access to what we have in this moment. Like you being able to talk to me live, like I never had access to that. That was never even an option. And there are so many YouTube channels which are great, honestly. Don't just focus just on my channel. Like focus on every channel. This is your um career. But I have a ton of videos here for you to share and just go through them, whatever you want to. You don't even have to, but just know that I have a lot of information that I've gone through. And I feel with that information, you will be pretty much knowing what you need to do to become a CRNA. I believe it. If I had known what I knew, what I shared with you, I would have been like, oh, man. But that's why I'm here, right? To share with you. And also, a lot of the content of the videos I've had in the past, I'm going to revamp them in the lives, right? I'm going to have my little organized little list, and I'll revamp a lot of that stuff to kind of update it because things change, But then again, things don't change. Things are pretty much the same. So yeah, let's see. Oh yes, I'm so happy to be here. I love it, and I appreciate you. So everyone, have a wonderful day, and thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Bye.